This video is sponsored by Displate.
You look pretty cool though. That's a plus.
Welcome to Screen Crush. I'm Ryan Airy, and this is all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things that you might have missed in the first episode of Hawkeye. Now we're posting two videos today, one for episode 1 and the other for episode 2. Make sure you check them both out, but in this video I'm going to avoid spoilers for episode 2. First of all, the new hero Shang-Chi has joined the Marvel Studios logo. Welcome Shang-Chi. The Easter eggs start early in this one with the font and color of the 2012 time card. Both this and the opening credits are styled after the brilliant Matt Fraction David Aja comic book series, which this TV series borrows heavily from. So a look around Kate Bishop's room tells us what kind of woman she's going to grow up to be, and the skills she will have. Yes, there are the archery medals and the fencing trophy, and the entire room is decorated in circles that look like targets. But there's also a photo of a woman doing a handstand at the Grand Canyon. I'm going to presume that's her mom, and that Kate is also doing a handstand in the photo with her, just out of frame. This toy truck is called Pet Vet, hinting at the love for animals that will lead her to save Lucky the pizza dog later on. By the door we see a climbing carabiner and a photo of her on a climbing wall with her dad. The photo is of course covered in hexagons. Hexagons have 6 sides, 666, Mephisto confirmed. Not the beast! And this giraffe, the same one we saw in WandaVision. She's also an artistic, creative kid, and we see her drawings all over the house. Now, I love this whole sequence, showing how ordinary people perceive the Battle of New York. It reminded me a lot of the brilliant comic book Marvels, where the major events of the Marvel Comics universe are seen through the eyes of an ordinary photographer. I also appreciate that you can pinpoint where this exactly happens in the Battle of New York. Clint saves her with the arrow that he fired without looking.
Well, they can't bank with a damn. Find a tight corner.
Now the geography matches up too, with Kate growing up on Park Avenue South, just down the road from the battle, and also near the former office of Marvel Comics HQ.
Hey, it looks real nice in here. I like these posters.
Oh, you like these? They're actually exclusive metal posters made by Displate, the sponsor of this video. These posters are great. They're durable, but you hang them with magnets. They have posters officially licensed by Star Wars, Marvel, DC.
Do they have posters of my favorite stuff, like dogs and chicken wings?
Actually, they do. In fact, there are more than 1.4 million designs.
But that's so many. How will I choose?
Well, if you click the link in the description, you'll see my profile, where I've curated some of my favorite posters on the site. I have different collections for Hawkeye, Eternals, Boba Fett, and many more. Each displate is printed on demand and has a fast delivery, and is signed by a master of production. Plus, every time you buy one of these metal posters, Displate plants a tree. So, buying a displate is good for the environment and for your break room. We're offering Screen Crush fans a special discount. If you click the link in the description, you get your first 1 to 2 displates for 34% off. 3 or 4 are 38% off, and if you buy 5 or more displates, you get a 42% discount.
What a savings!
Yes, Doug, it is. Kate's parents are having an argument about money, so spoilers for the comics and potentially for the show, I don't trust Kate's mom. In the comics, Kate finds out that her dad has ties to organized crime, and this series is definitely hinting that her mom is up to no good. It wouldn't surprise me at all if she actually killed her dad for the insurance money and then blamed it on the aliens. But that's just my theory.
Not the beast!
Now, I mentioned earlier that we could tell a lot about Kate's skills by the objects in her room. We can tell even more about Kate's character by how she reacts to trauma.
I need to protect us.
The opening credits are brilliant animated renderings of David Aja's art style, and they walk us through Kate's training and adolescence as she learns to fight, fence, shoot, and tumble, and moves higher up the awards podium every time. Then we see Kate in modern day, which we know from the Hawkeye logo and font from the comic. She breaks into a bell tower that's called Stane Tower, and yes, according to this plaque, it was named after Obadiah Stane, Tony Stark's mentor turned villain from Iron Man 1. It's kind of weird that they kept his name on it after he became a supervillain, but maybe they'll use this renovation as an excuse to rename it. This could also be hinting at another wealthy mentor figure turning out to be a villain. Eh? She calls her friend Greer, who might be Greer Nelson. In the comics, she's the superhero Tigra. After an experiment gone wrong, she became a half-human, half-cat lady, and got it on with Star Fox, Harry Styles' character from the Eternals. And that was actually one of my favorite details in the episode. Next, we see Kate arriving home from Grand Central, where the Battle of New York took place. We can even see the statue of first responders that replaced the statue of Mercury. It's also significant that she's entering on ground level, beneath the bridge where the Avengers assembled for the first time, showing that she is on the lower levels, but on her way up the ladder of superstardom. Across the street, we see an ad for Rogers the Musical, the new Steve Rogers sensation that's sweeping Broadway. And the theater that it's in is actually across the street from Hamilton, which is appropriate. Both shows are about American icons and have similar two-level staging. The tagline line is a timeless story for a timeless hero, referring to Steve Rogers being a man out of time. Now, the song they're singing is called I Can Do This All Day, a callback to Steve's catchphrase.
I can do this all day.
The heroes are the original 6 Avengers plus Ant-Man, who's wearing the logo for PEM Technologies on his uniform. Maybe he was included as a corporate sponsor of PEMTech. And I think that Ant-Man being here was actually a meta joke, because the Wasp and Ant-Man were in the original script for the Avengers, but they were cut because Edgar Wright's Ant-Man movie hadn't been released yet, and never will. Also, Steve Rogers' jacket looks more like his uniform from the Winter Soldier. There are also several Chitauri and Loki right here. In fact, in the final number, Thor and Loki are dancing together as brothers. Now, this whole thing could be construed as poking fun at the musical Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark. But I think the musical number has a deeper meaning for the show's characters and for its theme. First of all, we're seeing the traumatic events of the episode's opening through the lens of musical theater. In the opening, all those events were grounded and realistic, but in the musical, those same events have become distilled to keep some elements, but are symbolized by easy-to-understand objects. Kate's home was almost destroyed by a Chitauri scooter, but here the scooter is a harmless piece of scenery on wires. So the people in the MCU don't have to wrap their minds around these horrific events. They can just go see the show. The show tells them that the invasion was no big deal. Commercialized art always finds a way to take disasters and turn them into products. But speaking more to the themes of the show, the musical shows how people want to be involved in the lives of heroes. See, ordinary people know that they're not in control of the world anymore. The heroes are. Musicals and stories help people to not feel helpless. They make them feel like they're involved. Or, in Clint's case, a little too involved. For him, the trauma isn't about the Battle of New York, it's Nat's death. So this was a great moment. Him watching the Nat actress in silence really got to me. And we also see that Clint has a hearing aid, just like in the comics where he's deaf. He became deaf in the Matt Fraction series after a hitman stabbed out his eardrums with his own arrows. They do reveal why he has a hearing aid in the next episode, but I'm not going to ruin it here. The musical number mentions specific events from the Avengers, like Tony putting a nuke in the wormhole,
Tony, you got nukes to catch, be careful not to crash.
the Avenger shawarma,
Let you swarm when we're done.
and Hulk smashing ends with everybody being bathed in green light. And one of the reviews outside even calls this musical a smash in every way. The musical is also a meta commentary for Marvel Studios. See, they're looking forward to building up Phase 4 and creating new heroes, but they also know that their audience is mostly obsessed with the older heroes and the battles they fought. But there's only so many ways you can retell that same story. Clint goes to take a leak and has 2 awkward encounters in the bathroom. The first is with this graffiti, "Thanos was right." Now, we saw in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier that some people, like the Flag Smashers, thought the world was better off during the blip, and after all, there was less pollution, clear skies, open borders, and shorter lines at Comic-Con. For Clint, this is kind of like Vietnam vets who came home to people spitting on them in the airport and calling them baby killers. His best friend sacrificed her life to bring everyone back, and the idea that her sacrifice was in vain is insulting to him. The other awkward encounter is with a fan, going back to the idea that people just want to be involved in the heroes' lives, which we saw in Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Is there any chance, and of course you could say no, that I could get a selfie with your arms out?
Are you serious?
Now we're going to see this theme occur again and again in the series. Kate arrives to find that her mother is engaged to Jacques Duquesne. In the comics, he's a supervillain, sometimes hero called the Swordsman. He was originally a circus performer who trained a young Clint Barton how to be an archer. I'm hoping that we get to see that hidden connection in this show. He's played by Tony Dalton, aka Lalo Salamanca from Better Call Saul. One thing I'm loving about this show is the grounded, regular guy stuff that Clint has to go through. Not just getting selfies like a celebrity, but having his meals on the house.
It's safe now, city.
I also thought that Clint was one of the most necessary Avengers because he showed the limits of what humans can do next to these gods. At the party, Kate meets Armand Duquesne, who in the comics was the swordsman's father who gave him his first sword. He was also a villain, but more of a shady, behind-the-scenes politician type. There's also 2 reminders in the episode that there are 6 days till Christmas. Since there are 6 episodes in the season, I'm betting that every episode is a new day, ending on Christmas Day. So Kate finds her way into an illegal auction, which is also adapted from the Matt Fraction books, where Clint and Katie infiltrate an auction held by supervillains. And they're selling off the gear that Clint wore during the blip, when he went on a murder rampage.
The Ronin suit.
Now this is the first time we've heard this suit called by its name, Ronin. In the comics, Ronin was an identity that Clint assumed for a while, which was afterwards taken over by other people, including Echo, one of the villains in this series. So the underworld does not know that it was Clint who was hunting them, and he's terrified that they'll find out and come after his family. Then the auction is attacked by the tracksuit Draculas. These are the main villains from the Hawkeye comics. comic. Eastern European dudes who wear tracksuits and call everyone bro. They're looking for a watch.
We've got 90 seconds to find a watch. Everything else is secondary.
Now, I have a couple theories on this watch that involve Tony Stark and Kang the Conqueror and Wilson Fisk the Kingpin that I'm going to talk about later in the video. I just want to throw this one out there. Kate's mom sure didn't seem surprised by the power flickering out. Was she behind the robbery?
Not the beast!
There's also a classic Hawkeye villain at the auction, This Is Your Mom. So Kate steps up and does the heroic thing. This is also similar to her origin story in the comics. When her family was attending a wedding at St. Patrick's Cathedral, it was attacked by terrorists, and she helped the Young Avengers fight them off. This is how she came to join the team. This is a pretty great fight, but I love seeing how Kate's inexperience just led to mistakes. Like when she tried to kick this guy, he just grabs her feet, and then she fails to do the Black Widow leg takedown because the pipe she's holding onto breaks. Later, Clint watches all of this on Spectrum One News, a real-life news station. Now, this anchor, Pat Kiernan, has actually appeared in several MCU properties, including the Marvel Netflix shows and Spider-Man Far From Home. When Clint sees the Ronin suit on the news, we see flashbacks of his time in Endgame. But remember, this scene is when he saw Nat and she pulled him away from his anger and depression. So recovering the suit and destroying it are also a way of honoring her memory and friendship. Now, they do say this was the first sighting of Ronin in years, even though it hasn't been years since the blip. I'm betting this is just because Clint left very few survivors to tell their stories. Now, the dog Lucky is one of my favorite characters from that original Hawkeye book. There's even an entire issue from his point of view that won the Eisner Award and Harvey Awards for the best single issue of a comic. In the Hawkeye series, Clint rescues the dog just like Kate rescues him here. And the tracksuit Draculas are tracking her, and just like in the comics, they say bro a lot.
We got you now, bro.
Now, just like before, my favorite thing about this fight is that she can't really hold her own. She's out of breath and out of her element, but she still tries. What's more Hawkeye than that? But there are some elements of this show that aren't very realistic, like finding an unlocked car in Manhattan. So the episode ends with Clint rescuing Kate and setting up their mentor-mentee relationship from the comics. Now let's talk about that watch that the tracksuit Draculas were trying to steal. Your first reaction might be, oh, that's Doctor Strange's watch that Rachel gave him. But this watch isn't broken, and why would someone want a watch that only has sentimental value to Stephen Strange? Now, next thought I had was that since the Ronin gear was also recovered from the wreckage, maybe this watch belonged to Clint, but specifically, maybe he stole it from one of the gangsters that he attacked. Now, in the comics, the tracksuit Draculas are actually working for Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin. Maybe Clint stole this watch from him. In fact, maybe this watch has sentimental value to Wilson Fisk because it was given to him by his wife, Vanessa. Now, of course, we've already seen Vincent D'Onofrio give us a brilliant portrayal of the Kingpin in the Daredevil TV show, which I'm pretty sure is MCU canon. Now, in the Daredevil TV show, Vanessa did give Wilson a set of cufflinks, so giving him another fashion accessory like a watch would make a lot of sense. This show's villain Echo also has ties to Fisk that we will talk about in our breakdown of episode 2. So another theory that I really like is that the watch belonged to Tony Stark. He refined his nanotech to the point where he can keep his entire Iron Man suit in a chest plate. And we've already seen a wristwatch that contains his glove and repulsor rays in Captain America Civil War. And then there's Edith, hardware designed as a fashion accessory that can command an army of killer drones. So odds are very good that this watch is some piece of deadly Tony Stark tech. In fact, maybe this show can even lead into the show Armor Wars, about Don Cheadle stopping Tony's tech from getting into the wrong hands. Now, those are the theories that make the most sense. But let's go crazy.
You want to get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts.
This watch is from lot number 268. Avengers number 268 is about the villain Kang the Conqueror encountering variant Kangs inside of Limbo. Kang is also the master of time. We have a watch and time. In the comics, Avengers Tower was bought out by a company called the Kang Corporation, which turned out to be run by Kang the Conqueror. We even saw this same tower in Loki. So maybe Kang, working through a street-level means like the Kang Corporation, has commissioned these Draculas to find this watch. Now, because he's from the future, he knows that the watch will lead to the origin story of Kate Bishop joining the Young Avengers. And in the comics, one of the Young Avengers was a teenage Kang. And eventually, the team had to manipulate events to make sure that Kang did exist in a future timeline. So this entire storyline with the watch might just be Kang making sure that he exists in the future. Well, that's all the Easter eggs that we found, but if you found any, let me know in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe and smash that bell. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy.